Hi, boys and girls. My name is Alana Jensen, and I work for the Idaho National Laboratory as an educator, and I get to talk about lots of different kinds of science to boys and girls in the classroom. Today, we're going to talk about the science of weather, and you guys probably know a lot about weather. In fact, if you looked out the window today, you could probably describe using real-life weather words just what the weather is like. Definition of weather is what is happening outside the atmosphere at a given time. So when you look out the window and you see a sunny day, that is using weather words, that is weather. If you see some clouds in the sky, that's also weather. If you see rain, that is part of weather as well. And if you see a rainbow, that is also part of weather. What about wind? Yes, wind is also part of weather. So you guys know a lot about weather already. Today we're going to talk about the three things that it takes to make weather. The first thing is the sun, and the sun is where the heat comes from. The next thing we need for weather is air. And the third thing we need for weather is water. And so we're going to talk about each of those separately, but we're going to start with the sun. The sun gives us lots of things, a couple of things. First of all, it gives us uh, lots of light so we can see when we go outside and see in our homes during the daytime. It also makes the moon shine because of the light reflects on the moon. But it also gives us heat. So if you're outside on a warm day and you touch the sidewalk, you can feel the heat that the sun is giving to the earth. And so that heat is the energy that makes weather happen. Next thing we need is water, and water is found all over the earth, but we don't always see water in the same way. Sometimes water is solid, so think about ice and snow as solid water. We also see water and rain and puddles and lakes and rivers, and that's called liquid water. And then there's some water we can't see because that water is evaporating, big word, a big weather word, and it is moving up in the atmosphere in the among the air, and so we can't see it. The particles of water are too small. So water has some special properties that allows it to be seen in three different ways. And how many of you have ever heard of water called H2O? H2O means that in every little tiny piece of water, there are two pieces, little tiny atoms or particles of hydrogen, those H's, and one bigger atom of oxygen. And when they go together, they always go together in something that scientists call the teddy bear molecule, but I like to call it Mickey Mouse molecule because it kind of looks like Mickey Mouse to me. Now, the way that water sticks together like that with the two hydrogen ears and the big oxygen phase makes it a pretty special molecule. Because of the way it goes together, it has a positive side and a negative side, and that's kind of like a magnet. So what do magnets do when you put them close to each other? They stick together, right? And that's what water molecules like to do. They like to stick together. So we have a bunch of them that always try to stick together. Now, that word that describes how water likes to stick together, one of the words is called cohesion. And cohesion is just water molecules sticking together. And cohesion is why some insects can walk on water, like that water skipper, or why the astronauts see water in a great big bubble that looks like a soap bubble. And so we're going to do an experiment with cohesion. And so to get ready for this experiment, you'll need some plastic wrap like saran wrap, or a piece of glass like a mirror, or a glass that is in a picture frame. But be careful, make sure glass can be very sharp, and so make sure the edges are protected. You'll also need an eyedropper, and if you don't have an eyedropper, just a regular old drinking straw and a cup to hold the water will work, and I'll show you how that works. You'll need a flat surface. This needs to be done on a flat place, so like a table or the floor. And then if you have some spills, because we are going to be using water, you can get a cloth or paper towel for messes. And so I am going to explain how we're going to do this experiment, and then we'll walk through it step by step. Okay, boys and girls, if you decide to use an eyedropper, this is how your eyedroppers work. First of all, take that spongy thing at the end. It's called the bulb of the eyedropper. Hold it tight until you put it in the water and then let it go, and the water will go right up the tube of the eyedropper, and then to get it out, you just squeeze the bulb a little bit at the end. Now, if you decide to use a straw, you need to cut the straw into a smaller portion. You're going to put the straw into the cup of water and put your finger right over the top of it, and that'll hold the water inside because of air pressure. And to let the water out of the straw, you just let go of your finger. And now we're ready to do the experiment. So to do the experiment, or going to, first of all, make some drops of water on your plastic. And first of all, observe those drops, see what shape they are, see if they're flat or if they're raised, and then start playing with those drops. See if you can pull them apart, see what happens when you put a drop next to the other, see if it likes to join together. That is cohesion at work. It doesn't like to pull apart because cohesion keeps the water drops together. If you put another one right next to it or move it around, those water drops are going to move together. And so that's your next part of the experiment, using cohesion, and you'll see cohesion with that water. The next part of the experiment is using another property of water called adhesion. And adhesion is where water sticks to something else, like your dry finger. Put your finger as close as you can over the top of that drop and see how water reaches up and grabs your finger. That is using water using adhesion to stick to something else like your finger. It also will stick to a towel or your washcloth that you're using to clean up spills, or the paper towel. And so water does like to stick to other things. So to do this experiment, we're going to do this step by step. First of all, you're going to drop several drops of water in the plastic and look at them from above, look at them from the side. What shape are they? Are they raised up because of cohesion? They kind of look like little igloos or half of a sphere. Then you're going to play with them. You're going to put them together. You're going to pull them apart. You're going to move those water drops around. And then the next thing you're going to do is see if water sticking to something else. That's called adhesion. So slowly move your dry finger just above one of the drops and then observe what happens. Adhesion is attraction of water to something else. So remember that. You might need to pause this video so you can do this experiment. Now the third thing that we need for weather is air. And air is all around us. We can't see it, we can't taste it, we can't smell it unless there's something in it. But air is all around us. It makes kind of a blanket around the earth called the atmosphere. And if you look right there on the edge of the earth, you can see that faint blue shadow, and that is the atmosphere. That is the air pushing all around us. Now air is important for weather. Now that air around us has a lot of properties, but one of the properties is that air can get hot, and when it gets hot, it goes up. Hot air always makes things rise, and that's how hot air balloons work. We heat up the air. Do you see the fire in the balloon? Heat up that air, and the hot air balloon goes up. So we're going to use some lab equipment and figure out how that works. Now, this lab equipment is called a hand boiler. And hand boilers are made out of glass, so I'm going to be really careful. But they're also made of two things inside. There's air, and there's also some liquid to show us which way the air is moving. Since we can't see the air, I'm going to use the heat of my hands to warm up that air, and we'll see that that liquid is moving up. What's pushing it? The hot air. The air is getting warmed by my hands and pushing that liquid right up to the top. In fact, you can see that air really wants to get through that liquid. Did you see it bubble? Now we're going to cool the air down. We took away my hands, so the heat source is gone. And what is happening to the liquid? That's right. The liquid is moving down because the air, the cold air is also moving down. So we can see from this experiment that hot air always goes up, and as air is heated, it moves up through the atmosphere. And when it gets way up in the atmosphere and gets cold, then it starts to go down. Now, as that air moves up and down, it makes something called wind. So we've got air and heat working together. The, uh, the heat from the sun comes in tiny little particles called photons, and they come right through the air, and they're so tiny and moving so quickly at about 186,000 miles per second. And so they're moving so quickly that they don't heat up the air. But what does get hot is the ground. And if you've ever walked on the sand or a sidewalk in the middle of the summer with bare feet, you know that that ground is getting really hot. It heats up the air and the air moves up. And as it moves up, it gets a lot farther away from the ground and it cools down, and we have it starts moving down again. And so we have these big circles of air moving around us. We don't feel it because we're right down there on the ground. But when the air moves fast enough on the ground, we call that wind. And so wind happens because air is getting hot and air is getting cold. Now, as they move up, we're going to they make a cloud, and so we are going to make a cloud. There's a couple of things you need to make the cloud. First of all, you need a clear glass jar. You can use a clear cup as well. You need some hot tap water. You don't want boiling water, just water from the tap is good. You'll need either a metal pie pan, or if you don't have that, you can use a frozen ice pack that's big enough to cover the whole top of the jar. If you use a pie pan, you'll also need some ice. And here's where we need some help from adult, because we're going to use a match. We need the smoke from the match to make our cloud. So I'm going to walk you through how this works, and then you can pause the recording and try it yourself. So first of all, I have all my lab equipment all together. You can see that I have my jar of water with about, or clear jar with about 2 inches of warm water in there. And I have everything else I need really close, including an adult. So there is water in that jar. I can stir it up with a spoon, and we're going to make more water go into the air in the jar. That is called evaporation. And then we're going to light a match, and we don't need the fire from the match. Remember to use an adult, but we need the smoke. Smoke is something that is in the air that is going to give water something to stick to. Now I put my metal pie pan really quickly over the top, and I arranged the ice over the top, and all of a sudden we're going to see that that water in the jar is going to start to condense. That means it's going to start to stick together, and we're going to be able to see pieces of water. Now it's not clear anymore. Can you see the cloud that's swirling inside? I'm going to take the top off the jar in a minute, and you'll be able to see that that cloud will even come right out of the jar. Did you see it? Did you see the cloud come out of our jar? Now that isn't smoke. We just used a tiny little bit of smoke in there, or from the match. But what we need to make a cloud is something for the water to stick to. And nature doesn't always use smoke, though it can from a big forest fire. But it also uses dirty things like pollution or dust in the air, or most often it uses salt from the oceans that get evaporated. Now, here comes my cloud right out of the bottle, but I'm going to keep the ice off the top, and so that air is staying warm. Can you see the water in the air start to disappear again as it becomes part of, it becomes evaporated and becomes invisible to our eyes again. So we made a cloud. The next thing we need to see how all these things work together, heat, water, and air, is to make precipitation. And precipitation is just any water that comes out of a cloud. Now, what happens is we have our cloud up in the air, and a little bit of water evaporates and gets into our cloud. And if the drops stay really small, the water is going to stay in the cloud and it's going to float right over the top of us and won't rain on us at all. But as more water evaporates, the water drops are going to start to stick together and they're going to get heavy. And can you see what's coming out of the bottom? Precipitation, water coming from my cloud. Good job. Now there are 4 kinds of precipitation we have most often in Idaho. Let's see if you can name them. Give you a minute. Of course you know what the top one is. That is snow. And we live in Idaho, so we know all about snow. That is water in a solid form. The next one over is rain, and we see a lot of rain in Idaho too. That is water in a liquid form. The bottom two are a little harder though. The one underneath the snow picture is called sleet, and that is little snow pellets. They're not ice pellets, but they're little pellets of snow that have formed because the snowflakes melted on the way down and then got cold again and reformed into little snow circles. The last one is hail, and they are big ice pellets, so ice coming from the clouds. Good job. So boys and girls, you've done a really good job today learning all about weather, and I've got a little bit of review, and we're going to help you get through these and so we can remember all the things we learned about weather. First of all, my first question is, what are the 3 things that make up weather? Now the first one is where the heat comes from, the energy. Do you remember? That's right, it's the sun. The next part is they like to stick together. These little molecules of H2O like to stick together, and they are seen in weather in solid, liquid, and gas states of matter. Yep, you're right. That is water. And the third one is all around us. We can't see it. We can't taste it, but it is all around us, and it can move heat around. When it's hot, it moves up. When it's cold, it moves down. Do you remember what it is? That's right, it's air. The next question is about our clouds. Now, there were 3 things we used to make a cloud. The first thing was in the jar, about 2 inches at the bottom. Do you remember what that was? That's right, we need water to make a cloud. We need that water to be a little bit hot, and so it was moving up, right? The air and the water were moving up. Now, the next thing, remember the match? That's called it made smoke, which is called a condensation nuclei, a big word which really means something in the air that water can stick to, and so it can start to form a raindrop or a little cloud droplet. The third thing is that ice on the top. Yeah, we needed to make that air cold, and that made our cloud. Good job. The last one is 4 types of precipitation. You don't have to get them in the same order as me. Think about it. The first 2 were easy, aren't they? Yes, the first 2 were snow and rain, but the last 2 were sleet, little snow pellets, and hail, little ice pellets. You guys did a great job learning about weather today. Thank you so much for learning with me, and have a great day. Bye-bye.